Listen Lanarkshire is a community radio station governed by the registered charity Getting Better Together Limited. Therefore, the radio station itself retains political neutrality, and any political views or comments aired as part of political discussion programming or otherwise are not the views of Listen Lanarkshire, nor of Getting Better Together Limited. The station has a set of key commitments found on the Ofcom website, and we adhere to all necessary Ofcom rules. For more information or inquiries, please contact us at radio@shotshealthyliving.com.
This program is a political discussion and commentary show. It contains robust political discussion and strong opinions. Politicians with a sensitive disposition should turn off now. The views expressed by contributors are their own and are given in a personal capacity as residents and individuals. They do not represent the views of any council, Listen Lanarkshire, or any associated organization. No council resources are used in the production of this program. Contributors who hold elected office are not speaking on behalf of their authority and are participating in a personal political capacity. This is a great show, beautiful show, big beautiful show, so big and so beautiful. These guys are great, not as great as me. Who will they offend this week?
Hello and welcome back to What's the Point, your number one podcast and political podcast and satirical programme that is aimed and designed for residents of North Lanarkshire to keep you in the know. I'm your host tonight, Greg Lennon. Now, tonight's show, we have to put a wee bit of a trigger warning out there. We're going to be discussing quite a lot of sensitive information, and we advise anybody at all who has experienced anything at all that's been discussed in tonight's show that they may wish to seek additional support. And we'll put a number at the end of the show for any support mechanisms that are currently available out there. So tonight the show is going to be asking questions and key questions that others won't. The show, again, for our position in the last few weeks is kind of focused on, in particular last week, the current scandal surrounding Jordan James Linden, which has been news all over North Lanarkshire. The former council leader convicted this last week in Falkirk court on 10 counts, including sexual assault. Now, it's important that we let that sink in. This is a man who led the SNP Group on North Lanarkshire Council, the man who sat in that chamber and made decisions affecting every single person in our authority, convicted 10 times over. You might think that that would be the end of the story, but unfortunately it isn't, because what happened after, what happened inside the SNP Group while all of this was unfolding, in some ways even more disturbing than the conviction itself. We've seen the recordings, or heard the recordings, we've heard what was said behind closed doors, and tonight for the first time the full picture is going to be told publicly and on this programme. Here's what we know while Jordan Linden's victims were dealing with what had been done to them, while they were trying to find the courage to come forward. There were certain individuals within North Lanarkshire SNP Group who were more concerned about Jordan's welfare than the welfare of those he had wronged. We have the recordings that were published this week that online that reveal the conversations that took place, conversations where the questions being asked wasn't how do we support the victims, the questions actually being asked was how do we support Jordan. Even then, and I want to make this very clearly, we then hear a victim was in the room at the time these comments and suggestions were being made. One SNP councillor looked at the situation, looked at a man who's now been convicted in 10 counts including sexual assault, and told colleagues that Jordan was, and I'm only going to quote this directly, only guilty of being a young person. 10 convictions including sexual assault. The court in Falkirk saw it very differently. And throughout all of this, where was the SNP? The group leader, Tracy Carragher, what did she know? When did she know it? What did she do about it? And what has she done since? They're not rhetorical questions. These are questions we're going to ask tonight out loud and on this programme, because they deserve answers. And with Tracy Carragher seeking to represent this area at Holyrood, with the election just weeks away, the people in North Lanarkshire have every right to know the answers before they cast their vote. Tonight we're joined by 3 remarkable councillors, 3 people, and I appreciate that the Ethical Standards Commission is probably listening tonight, but I think it's imperative to explain that yous were councillors when yous were challenging these circumstances. 3 people that looked at what was happening inside the SNP Group and made a choice that's rarer in politics than it should be. They chose to do the right thing. When pressure was on them to stay quiet, they spoke. When instinct of the group was to close ranks, they stood firm. And when Jordan Linden needed protecting, they refused to be the ones who protected him. Councillor David Crichton, Councillor Paul Damasio, Councillor Barry McCluskey, tonight they will tell you what they saw, what they heard, and why they could not stay silent. And then we come to the moment in this programme that the entire conversation has been building towards. Tonight, for the first time, we'll be speaking to one of Linden's victims, Councillor Cameron McManus, and asking Cameron how this all makes him feel, especially coming to the end of a trial and a conviction. Because he deserves to be heard, because every victim deserves to be heard, and because the people in North Lanarkshire deserve to know the human cost of what actually happened and the human cost of the cover-up that followed. This is not a normal Tuesday night, and we apologise in advance that this will be a very, very dry, sensitive subject matter, and I think it has to be treated respectfully. We are obviously live in 107.7 FM right now, and if you're not already listening, tell your smart speaker to play Listen Lanarkshire and share this with everyone you know in North Lanarkshire, because it's important that this discussion happens. And when we come off air tonight, we'll hopefully go into TikTok live for a wee bit, but as I said again, we're not going to stick to any stringent position on TikTok tonight. So before we get started, I would obviously like to introduce my co-host and partner in procedural crime, Mr. Jerry Brennan. Jerry, how are you?
Good evening, Greg, and as always, it's an extraordinary pleasure to be here and to be here in the company of these 2 gentlemen at the moment, soon to be 4, and we've got guests just coming in the door. I think what you've said to begin the show is absolutely appropriate. The subject matter is one of seriousness, and I think tonight will give an opportunity for the guys who have joined us to maybe enlighten the people in North Lanarkshire and beyond about the circumstances surrounding this very tragic set of circumstances. You're right to point out that there are victims involved, and they must always be at the forefront of our thoughts. There's not only victims of sexual abuse and sexual harassment, there are other victims in this as well, and some of them have had their reputations damaged. I think it's right that each and every one of them has the opportunity to put the record straight.
So if we're alright, gents, because we do have a significant number of guests this evening, as I say, Councillor Paul Damasio, Councillor Barry McCluskey, Councillor David Crichton, and yourself, Councillor Cameron McManus, and me and Jerry. So I think it's more appropriate that we kind of kick things off with Cammy, if that's okay. Cammy, how are you after everything?
Personally, I'm just scunnered with it. From a personal point of view and a wider picture, I was ready just to put Thursday and Friday behind me, but when you see the communications and the way the SNP's handled the overall situation, the Thursday and the Friday, it's just a backhand to myself and most of the other individuals that they've ignored over the years.
Do you believe, as a victim, you've been exonerated in this process?
Yeah, especially after they've all went to court and completely changed the story that they've been saying the last couple of years. So with that, it's just really, really briefly, because I don't want to put you on the spot, Cameron, because ultimately the SNPs came out with a statement, and John Swinney's came out with a statement to say that the SNP will be reviewing its complaints process. How does that make you feel, especially for somebody who has been ignored within the SNP group in North Lanarkshire for a number of years, and to a certain degree challenged in relation to your recollection of events with regards to the meeting with the leader of the North Lanarkshire SNP group? But in addition to that, I think the most contemptible element of all of this is the fact that in a press release it's still coming out, although they welcome the verdict on the victims, there's still nothing at all to turn around and say, Cameron, we wish to meet and discuss and go over how we can make this process more focused. Look, it's as if they're more focused on calming down the media control over it all, as if they're trying to save the brand and save face. they're talking about reviews and looking into the handling. They're having a review and looking into the complaints procedure, but they're not having a review or a look into how that was handled both in North Lanarkshire and for the last 15 years.
That's a really good point to make. I mean, any organisation worth its salt is going to have policies and procedures on safeguarding and sexual harassment and all of that, which should be reviewed, regularly, annually, as legislation changes, as good practice changes, to make sure that they're up to date. But that should just be happening anyway. That it shouldn't take a major event for a review to take place. So in that respect, I think that's a complete red herring. It can only be described as a way to send you in another direction. The fundamental issue, as I understand it, and it's the position that we've taken from the very beginning, is that the circumstances which led to Jordan Linden having to remove himself first as the leader of North Lanarkshire Council, and then subsequently in March 2023 as a councillor entirely, the circumstances which led to him being in that position in the first place. And that means that from perhaps around 2012, 2013, when he's moving through the Scottish Youth Parliament and he's becoming a candidate for council and he's been elected as a councillor, and he's having to stand down in 2017 as a councillor, then in 2019 when he was running for candidacy for Westminster, he had to remove himself from that because of stories about his conduct. And then he somehow seems to, without any attempts to make inquiries or find out about, these stories, he becomes the leader of North Lanarkshire Council.
Well, we've covered it many times
and then
before.
disgracefully, for the very first time in the history of North Lanarkshire, the SNP become the largest party, and it lasts for 8 weeks.
We've covered that many times before, the failing in the vetting system, obviously, that was presented there. I'm going to come on to you guys now. Then basically, how do you feel exonerated? Now, when I ask this question, I'm keeping at the forefront of my mind that not only is there Cameron, there's other victims in this process who all had to testify in court. The most horrific ordeals, and having to regurgitate and go back over all ground. And to see prominent figures for the SNP group in North Lanarkshire, such as Councillor Tracy Carragher or Councillor Fiona Foran, giving witness testimony in relation to Linden's case for the defence. How does it make you feel this week? Do you feel exonerated in this process? And by no stretch of imagination am I saying that we're victims in this. We endured long hostile attacks on our character, on our reputation, and every opportunity taken and presented to attack us at any forum. But the reality is, do you feel that there's an exoneration? The party's recognised, the SNP's recognised its failings in this?
Well, the SNP have recognised nothing. In court, I feel all six of us in this room at the moment, and one other individual who isn't here, are wholly exonerated. But as others have mentioned, this isn't about us. It's 100%. It's obviously one individual here, but it's about the victims and not being listened to by the party, which seems to have been a pattern. And for Tracy Carragher in particular to hold that same line for 3 years, change her story in court and go back to the same line.
Change her story in court? What does that mean?
Well, for 3 years she's reiterated continually, whether it be in media, whether it be in the group, whilst we were all still there, that there was never any meeting
between Tracy and Cammy.
Between Tracy and Cammy. And we all know in this room that meeting happened.
And in the court there was an acknowledgement that meeting took place.
And it was turned away. And in court, absolutely, as you've just said, she acknowledged that there was a meeting. But right away, as soon as she's talking to the press, or the SNP have come out on our behalf, headquarters. So, I mean, the fact that they've even put that out also, there must be, surely to goodness, they've checked the the court records and make sure that they've got their facts correct.
Yeah. The whole element to this, and it's quite, you're right, it's quite a difficult programme at the end of the day. And exonerated, no, I don't feel exonerated. I don't feel as though it's my place to be exonerated. I think the fact that there was 12 individuals put themselves through what they put themselves through, Cammy included within a court setup, that's the people that hopefully have taken some kind of comfort, if there's comfort to be had, in the fact that collectively the information that was put forward to a jury was overwhelmingly, 10 charges, you mentioned it, Greg, 10 charges. This isn't just 1 or 2, this is 10 charges out of 15 that was considered out of an initial 22 charges. The numbers are colossal, but Paul's point's exactly right. The SNP party, to be honest, should be hanging their heads in shame tonight, because this goes beyond politics, and yet they're still playing politics with us.
Yes, absolutely.
They're still offering platitudes, they're still offering excuses. John Swinney said, well, we'll look at the complaints procedure. Absolute nonsense. Nothing to do with the complaints procedure. It's about the people that enabled these actions to be taken within his party. And he needs to own that. He needs to look at the people that facilitated it, allowed it to happen. And to be quite honest, it's quite unbelievable that they have not decided to take a personal review, one against Tracy Carragher as the group leader at that point. Look at the facts, look at the information, look at the stuff that has been put out on social media and all the bits and pieces that actually substantiate the position and what Cammy was trying to say at that particular time. And I think, honestly, the absolute stench of inaction and immoral standing that SNP group, in particular the executive, will last with that group for a very, very long time over this.
I think that's a good point. I think the entirety of that executive group, the leader, the deputy leader, the business manager, the assistant business manager, the secretary, the deputy provost to an extent as well, all of those individuals have responsibility for this, and each and every one of them decided to turn the tables.
Each and every one of them spoke up
on the victim.
For Jordan, whilst a victim is in the room.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask next, and unfortunately we need to kind of cast our minds back to July 2022 when that group meeting, obviously there's a recording circulating on social media just now, a secret recording of that actual group meeting, where individuals in that room were very supportive of Jordan, questions being raised in relation to Jordan's mental health. How does Jordan's loved and supported? I think Fiona Foreign says Tracy Carragher, well, and Jordan's mental health is really, really bad at the moment. Anne Ballinger, disgusted. Claire Bartley, group business manager at that time, this is evil. The members in this group going to the press. Cammy, how and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, how does that make you feel when you were sitting in that room?
It's hard to put it, obviously nobody in the room at the time knew that I was one of the individuals with a grievance against them. But you've got individuals in that room, and Councillor Fotheringham, Fiona Fotheringham, admitted in that room that she was aware of one of the instances. And not only that, but she said that she spoke to the victim as well.
Yeah, that is horrific. I think we all took a side at the same time there. Yeah,
so a certain councillor who's aware of an accusation of that magnitude that he's now been officially charged for, and rather than do anything about it, she stayed quiet. She's not about it.
Not only stayed quiet, Cammy, she also protected and was going on about Jordan's mental health rather than the victim's mental health. It's staggering.
It was the reference and the way the individual who'd gone to the press, whether they went to the press voluntarily or not, it was the way that individual was described. That individual was described as a careerist. A careerist, not a victim, but a careerist. Just a despicable explanation.
Sorry, Jerry, the point of it just came literally this evening. I'm just thinking that everybody around the table other than Cammy are parents. And I just kind of thought, see if somebody comes to you, it doesn't matter what role you take, whether you're SNP leader or CEO, whatever company it is, somebody comes to you with such serious allegations, as a parent, you immediately think, what do you do? I mean, there's a huge responsibility. Forget about politics, forget about everything else that's there. Is that there is an inherent obligation to take it seriously, to look at this. He's a young person that's sitting in front of you, making serious considerations about his own health and what has happened to him in the past, and yet even as a parent, nothing happened.
Well, the thing for me, David, is
he couldn't write that.
The thing for me is, and my background is children's play and youth work, and the thing for me is, the first thing that from a manager of a youth work or a children's play setting is, if a young person comes and discloses to me something along those lines, the first thing I am saying to them is, listen, whatever you disclose to me, I might not be able to keep this to myself. I might have to pass this on. And then as a manager, it is my responsibility to pass it on to HR or pass it on to my immediate manager, and in the instance start the process, because there could be an investigation. And in that instance, from a political point of view, on that instance, that should have been passed to headquarters straight away.
So that's a key question here, because there's 1, 2, 3. Always have got management experience. Every one of us have got management experience. We all have a different career field with politics as well. If it's a case that a member of staff came and reported this, and I appreciate we're no staff members, we're an anomaly in the world of work. However, and again, maybe that's something that has to come at the back of this, maybe reform and actual recognition in relation to the job requirements or protected legal rights for elected members have the same sort of system as an employee. But the point being here is if an employee comes to you, there's set procedures that have to kick in immediately as soon as any employee discloses. Why was this not done in relation to the SNP and Cameron's complaint? Because safeguarding policies exist within the SNP.
There was a safeguarding policy there. As I say, it goes back to John Swinney's point. We're going to review processes. It's great having processes.
Process, no processes. Complaints process. So again, I think that there's a stark difference in that.
But it's how complaints are handled, how that process is handled. Because there's a process on a piece of paper, does that mean that the elected members who are holding those offices within, a local authority, for example, in this case Tracy Carragher and numerous others, is there any expectation that they're going to follow procedure?
But the fact of
expectation maybe, but headquarters
can I just come in
at no point have stepped in to ensure that there's been no investigation.
What I'm going to say is that policy or that grievance or whatever it may be, it shouldn't be up for interpretation. No. It shouldn't be up for interpretation. So it should be reported in a standard way across the full party.
I raised this matter with Tracy Carragher and Claire Bartley. I highlighted the policy back in 2022.
Bartley was the
business manager
at that.
And I highlighted in an email exchange to both of them and gave them a copy of the policy at the time, because I remember you practically wrote that policy, Paul.
I was involved in it.
You were involved in the writing of that via the ANC. So again, the issue here is whether or not people chose to enact the policy that was being presented in front of them, follow process within the SNP, or completely disregard it because friendships, cronyism, whatever you wish to call it, was taking the precedent in this. Now, I revert back to after that full meeting where Jordan Linden had decided he's stepping down, resigning for the leader of the council group. The comments were again, Jordan wanted to be here this evening but his mental health is just so bad. At that point in time I was aware of a victim. A victim did disclose things to me, and I did raise that point with both the business manager and the leader of the group, Tracy Carragher, Claire Bartley. But we fast forward to the next week, and it was the anointment meeting with Tracy Carragher becoming the leader of the group, and in particular Kelly Parry, who chaired that meeting. Now Kelly Parry is the leader of Midlothian Council. She's the SNP leader of Midlothian Council. She sat in that meeting. All she was meant to do,
government convener for the
NEC, for the National Executive Committee for the SNP. She chaired that meeting. She was only there to chair that meeting until the appointment of the leader of the council group. It's not for a visiting chair to come in and lead the meeting. But what we experienced at the back of that, because questions were still being raised in relation to what Jordan Linden's position within the group was, and she shot down debate. she shot down any questioning, and in particular, David, you were one of the ones that was highlighted that you're not allowed to ask these types of questions. This is an individual's mental health.
Coincidentally, she's the same lady that sat in my disciplinary panel that expelled me. So you've got, see, when you build all this picture up, honestly, it's like, and we're detracting a wee bit for Cammy, but that's quite deliberate, because I know that he's really tired. He's really tired, and so he should be after what's happened in the last week or so. But you mentioned about all being managers. Somebody comes to you as part of your team. Now remember, Cammy had been there 6 years. This wasn't somebody just walked in your door. This is somebody they'd worked with for 6 years at that point, 5.5 years, give or take. So somebody in your team comes in 5.5 years in and says, look, I've got something I need to tell you, basically, and it's not going to be pleasant, and blah 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 from there. You've got an absolute duty of care and responsibility to make sure that it's heard, to make sure it goes to the right people, to make sure that you continually keep in contact with the person that brought it to you, to ensure their welfare, their well-being, and to make sure that any complaint like that has progressed. And what happened? Well, Cammy can fill in the details, but from where we're sitting, absolutely nothing. Quite the opposite. They actually actively tried to shut the damn thing down, and that is reprehensible.
For almost 6 months, we had a chat earlier on, just before we came on. So Cameron, the meeting with Tracy took place around the 27th of July. So we'll go September, October, November, December, January, February, 6 whole months before Cameron brings it to
the group's attention.
The group's attention again, and this time he brings it to the attention of the deputy leader, Alan Masterson, who
Cumbernauld councillor
who works in Jamie Hepburn's office, and to Richard Sullivan, the business manager. He became the business manager,
Calder Crooks councillor,
and he works for James Dornan, MSP.
Edinburgh North.
I have seen the email exchange between Cameron and those two individuals, right, where there is acknowledgement that nothing has been done in that period, in that 6 month period, that Cameron is bringing the issues of concern to their attention now. Sullivan and Masterson agree that this investigation is too big for the group to handle within North Lanarkshire Council, and therefore it has to be escalated to headquarters and to Ian McCann, who was the SNP compliance officer at that point in time. So that was the gravity, the seriousness of it. So at that point, and as I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, at that point Tracy Carragher was still telling the group that she knew nothing about any complaints being made to her directly. But in doing so, she then must expect the world to believe that her deputy knew about it, her business manager knew about it, Ian McCann knew about it.
No, I think
But
it's
she
very
didn't know
simple.
about it.
So we're talking there in relation to a meeting that took place in their anointment to becoming the leader of the council, or the SNP council group at that time. And at that meeting, Kelly Parry shut me down in relation to my line of questioning, and it made me make a comment with regards to him raising this formally with you now. That's what I'm doing, and Kelly Parry sat silent at that point. And the reason I know this because there's recordings floating in relation to that. And again, that entire meeting is recorded. So again, when the question was raised to Kelly Parry, and why is there no internal investigation being conducted in relation to the behaviour, but also in addition to that, why, as I said again, I'm not looking for judge, jury and executioner, but due process in relation to the safeguarding process has to kick in, because if there's any victims in the room at that point, then they have to have support mechanisms in place in front of them. These things, Kelly Parry, I note your statements, but never made contact with me after that meeting. Never once tried to contact me after that meeting with regards to my formal
she spoke
complaint.
to Ian McCann about those mistakes.
The individuals are obviously aware. Individuals were clearly aware at that point within the NEC.
And that meeting with Kelly Parry was in August.
So that was on the 8th of August, I'm sure.
So July, August, all the way through.
So there's two clear processes identified within that.
Conduct.
So we get to our involvement. There's a disclosure for Cameron, and Cameron obviously makes me aware of what's been going on. I'd already been aware of a victim within that as well, and we start to circle the wagons on Cameron and make sure support mechanisms are there. We then have what I can only describe as a hostile environment being aimed and directed towards us. So much so, Barry, you raised concerns in relation to disability at that point. Yeah. You're a registered blind member, and all of a sudden attacks were being made in relation to your disability, looking to exclude you from meetings, etc. Is that the normal function of a political group? Would you see that as acceptable behaviour?
A dysfunctional group?
No, but would you honestly see that as...
At one point I was, I had a really bad eye infection.
Yeah.
And was in the hospital for several hours on the Monday morning, with the group meeting being on the Monday afternoon, and I said I was going to join online, and the line I got told was, you have to turn your camera on because we want to see who's in the room with you. While I had a patch over one of my eyes, and I was putting eye drops in every hour.
But you would be kind of sensitive in relation to who's seen you at that point.
Yeah.
Do you think that kind of coincides then? Because listening back to the online recordings that are circulating on Twitter and everything else, the one where Carragher says the relation to the victims are only looking for self-gain and things. There was a form of gaslighting taking place at that time, and I recall, because listening to the recordings back, it's funny how your memory slips after a couple of years, but what I noticed was a significant pattern was the constant referencing or leaking within the group. Now, at that point, I can categorically say, I didn't know any of us who was leaking anything, or anybody at all who was taking anything to the press. This was fabricated, and so much so I had to point out at that meeting, are we being accused of going to the Sunday Mail in relation to the story that broke in the Sunday, being at the party in Dundee? Were we the ones that contacted Hannah Roger to say, get that in the press? No, that's not what we're saying. Well, what is it you're actually saying? Because all you're doing is spreading fear and alarming amongst the group.
A lot of that is misinformation to get the other members of the groups back up and on side with.
Yeah, there was lots of that. There was lots of that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that everybody necessarily in the SNP group in North Lanarkshire are bad people. I really don't. But the point remains, there's a cognitive dissonance that exists within that group. And the mentality within that group, that tribalism, that entrenched position, not prepared to listen to other people's positions, and
still alive and well.
Too many people in the group who I'm not trying to think of a better terminology, but that's the only thing that's popping in my head. Favours. So the fact that they're in those seats to other individuals in the room, such as the leadership, and in most cases Jordan Linden,
the former leader,
yes, who manipulated the process. I don't know whether we're going to get into all that, but that therein lies the problem. Too many of the individuals are therefore sitting there like nodding dogs, whereas we've
voting fodder, Paul.
Voting fodder. Whereas you get 6 or 7 individuals who eventually showed a backbone and stood up for what was right. The individuals in that room, whether they had been helped into those positions or not, should have basically stood up for what was right, and they should all hang their head in shame.
I want to go back to the point that Barry made. Barry, there were a few occasions where Barry was excluded. That example that you gave, where you were get your camera on, boys, so that we can see who's sitting next to you to make sure they're not recording.
What a bizarre request anyway. Somebody could stand at the side of the screen, my goodness.
Insane. There were meetings in Civic Centre where they were unhappy about certain individuals who had appeared at the meeting, i.e. Greg, and Tracy took the cohort of the group away to another place for a secret meeting where you couldn't access. A, you didn't know where it was, and B, it was going to be difficult for you to get there. So that was a second example of a disregard for those with disabilities.
And there's a third example as well.
Barry and I
they continued without you, mate.
Barry and I both
made a very important decision.
Have a chronic condition, right, that flares up at time and which renders me unable to go to work, right? And it happened on a Monday again for me, and I was allowed to stay up and work for my job and work from home, and I contacted Richard Sullivan, the business manager, to say, Richard, I'm having a difficult time today, can I go online for the meeting? And the answer was no, you cannot go online, despite the fact that there was a facility there for me to do that. And the reason set to me was you can't do it because in February of 2023 we voted to ban people from going online because people leak stories from the meeting, they record them and they go elsewhere.
Jerry, there was a time where Paul had a really bad accident at work. We fell off a ladder.
He jumped.
Yeah. He jumped.
Things have got that bad? No, not at all.
And myself and Paul both sat on a meeting for 45 minutes. And nobody allowed us into the meeting.
Yep.
So the meeting continued without us sitting in the waiting room.
Yep.
Just to put this into context for those folk at home, so what we've established is the initial stages of this. The Sunday Mail article breaks on the 27th of July. Yes. There is historical context there, Paul, that you, I and Cameron are wary. In 2017, Jordan Linden faced allegations with regards to abuse in the Scottish Youth Parliament and his relationship with the YSI, which is Young Scots for Independence, a political youth wing of the SNP. These allegations are obviously part of proceedings that took place and went to court on the guilty verdict. But the point being that those allegations in 2017, Linden was allowed to self-suspend himself, and immediately from that point had a trajectory that took him into the position of leadership within 4 years to then get into the council elections in 2022. Now, given the fact that, and I apologise to anybody listening at home that finds this obscene, but there was naked compromising pictures sent, and individuals all knew about that within the council. The 77 elected members were openly talking about seeing pictures of appendages, etc.
Not only SNP councillors.
Not SNP, but also Labour and other political groups and persuasions. But the point is that information was freely available in relation to the 77 elected members. And again, nothing was done at that point other than promote this individual through the ranks. Why would that be? Why would nobody at all look at actual behaviours taking place at that time?
That's mind-blowing. I mean, self-interest of the individuals around them, self-interest of his own. How headquarters ever signed off on that is... you've got to ask yourself the question, quite frankly.
Because right now there's a deniability for the party.
Why he was protected? Because it was protected.
Coming for the party.
And we're very good as councillors at looking at information and dissecting it and presenting it in a way that it should actually be read. There's nothing vague about some of this stuff, okay? So you look at 2 previous incidents that Linden was involved in that formulated part of the prosecution's case at Falkirk. So we've got 2 separate previous incidents that have been brought forward to the party. So they're aware of this. So there is nothing about Tracy Carragher or anybody within the SNP saying we're unaware of anything that's there. The safeguarding policy that's in place that Paul was part of writing was ignored. That's fact. Yep. It was ignored. It just wasn't implemented. So you can't change that. That's an action that's been taken, and they just ignored it.
It was executed for lesser offences.
So well, that's exactly where you're coming to, because if you ignore that policy, you've got 2 previous incidents that's there. If you look at the policy, it said that at the group leader's discretion, if any member of the group, and the word is implicated, if any member of the group is implicated in any serious activity, it is open to the group leader to suspend the individual pending investigation to get to an outcome.
Yeah, there's one bit missing from that. There's one line, unless it's Jordan.
Either way, totally ignored. That's written. That's not something that we've made up. That is policy. That's the process. Process was ignored by Tracy Carragher and others. There is no discussion in that. Yeah. So as soon as you step outside this process, you leave yourself open to all the criticism and everything else that's coming out.
Point blank refused to
enforce it.
Enforce the
repeatedly. refused to do it, Paul. You're right.
Safeguarding.
Cameron makes
But as Greg mentioned a second ago, they used it in other occasions.
So Cameron, that takes me nicely when they segue. Cameron makes the disclosure to me. I won't shut up. I'll continue to ask
to your credit, Greg, you did.
And continue
You were
to push
diligent.
on
You,
because
Paul, and David in particular.
because now we know we're 2 victims, and obviously you become aware, Paul, and the others become aware as the process starts to move on. Coming back to that point, do you know something? See in hindsight, there is nothing I would have done differently. Perhaps I'd have been more vocal than potentially what I was, and maybe a wee bit more straight to the point, and just highlighted the fact that no, I'm sorry, get that done right now. Because again, I think that by allowing us to be polite and process,
you could barely get the words out of your mouth. That was the problem.
Well, that's basically it. So the bit about it was they were relying at that point in time for us to continue just to be polite and execute things the proper procedural way. But really, it should have been a case of we just made demand. That should have really been it for me. But the point I would make is when you don't and you continue to be vocal in that process and disagree with me at any point here, Cammy, you become the target. So can't touch Cameron anyway.
Sure.
We need to keep Cameron easy and quiet and everything else, but then you focus your attention on others. So I was number 1 on the hit list in relation to that. 4 allegations came forward against me in quick succession, and emails later identify Carragher went with a complaint to Lorna Finn. Now it was came back to say there's not enough evidence in that. Next thing, a new email comes in, then an anonymous email comes in, and then my ward colleague, Councillor Joanne Kelty, comes in relation to the very final stage when Lorna Finn says that you need additional information to substantiate your complaint, and Joanne Kelty comes in and fabricates something about a public meeting. Now, point being to that is, at that point in time, they suspend me because they can't have me continuously asking questions in relation to Jordan Linden, and then you boys take the mantle up in relation to that process.
Do you know how an ex-police officer, now councillor, explained those allegations that were made against you?
Right.
A load of crap.
Well, here's the point.
A load of crap.
Here's the point, right? That isn't
She
about
was part
me.
of the executive
No, but it isn't about me. I want to get off of me, because it isn't about me. It's about the individuals that have experienced this. The point being is that very same process for what Joanne Kelty's complaint was, and you've all seen the emails, and you've all seen there was no communications that were ever completely unprofessional. When Joanne Kelty's complaint came forward, the allegation was safeguarding. So safeguarding process was used against me for sending and having a public meeting and saying the SPT contact is Adam Smith, but yet you have somebody perpetrating and actually creating sexual offences, and yet the same safeguarding policy isn't put to them. The protectionism. It's mind-boggling.
It is, Greg. There's no other way to put it. It's the worst kind of mind-boggling, because any reasonably minded person would look at both sets of circumstances and go,
what's worse?
There it's there. There it's there. And they've gone, no, it's the low-hanging fruit. It's the guy who's making noise. Let's shut him up. Let's make an example of him.
Most of it was in relation to email communication, and that was frankly because they shut us down at meetings, so we all had to, and you in particular at that time with Greg obviously had to revert to emails to get our points across.
No, the bit for me here is again, it's just absolutely staggering that you're going to cherry pick any sort of protectionism in relation to anybody. Again, if Councillor Kelty's allegation was correct, and that's what she felt at the time, although the timing and everything else is extremely questionable, the whole approach for Lorna Finn and advising that you've not got enough evidence in relation to formulating a complaint, because we can't just go on Kirsten Larson saying I was unhappy with him, or Richard Sullivan saying I don't like the tone of his email, or else even an anonymous complaint to say the communications or whatever. Again, these things, safeguarding was applied in relation to me in electronic communications, but wasn't applied to Cameron's situation when Cameron went forward to make the disclosure that he was a potential victim or an alleged victim.
What were you hoping, Cammy? We know the background as to why you had to take this case forward initially with Tracy Carragher, but what was your expectation?
Just sort of some sort of seriousness, but her taking a stand and contacting HQ had been taken as an additional complaint onto the two that the party were already aware of. I didn't know about many other complainants at the time, so I didn't know anybody else with issues. But I do remember one of the first days I was saying to the guys earlier on in 2017 when I was elected, one of the other councillors who was elected at the same time as was in Scottish Youth Parliament with Jordan, and was like, "Oh, have you heard some of the stories and accusations about Jordan?" And I said, "No, how was up?" He's like, nah, it's not my place to start telling tales. So there's more than just the individuals within the room currently, in the SNP room currently that know or are aware of the previous ones. It goes back.
See, this is what gets me, is that it's not just I mean, there's a whole culture, and that's the word that's missing for some of this dialogue just now. There is a culture, unfortunately, within the party that defaults to covering everything up.
Protect the party and senior individuals.
Well, it was one of the quotes that Tracy Carragher said at the meeting, wasn't it? It was like, we have to give the impression that we're functioning well or something. And you're sitting here, Cammy I think was in the room at that point. It had broken about the cases that were coming out, not just about Cammy's cases there. And all that was put forward to that group was, we have to, as a group, political group, put forward that we are functioning. No, I'm sorry. What you want to put forward is, we've got a serious issue to be dealt with on a personal level.
I disagree to a certain degree. I see it as being an opportunist that took advantage of a situation for political gain. That's what I see it as. I think Tracy Carragher is part of the cause, no part of anything else. I don't really see it as being, I think there's others in that room who support the SNP. The SNP can do no wrong. The party presides over everything. But you've got opportunistic individuals within that group setting that would take advantage of any situation.
I think you're right,
and that's the issue.
And that was borne out in some of the meetings that took place between the July and the Christmas period, where week after week we were advised that Jordan is improving. His mental health is improving. He's in a better place this week than he was next week.
He's feeling loved again,
and he's grateful for all the love that's coming from the group that's been shared, but it wasn't coming from me. And that Jordan was coming back to the group to play a full role, to take up his councillorship again, not as leader, but he was coming back to the group despite all the turmoil that this guy was going through internally. He was coming back to the group, and he was the priority, to the extent where he was reintroduced to the group at the Christmas night out. So I think you're absolutely right in what you're saying.
Within that political opportunism, use boys started, because I'm suspended in perpetuity. I've had to get legal cover in that as well and bring forward a legal solicitor representation. But use boys start to take the mantle up in relation to being vocal and outspoken and sending emails to parties and various other things, and then that targets use. So again, to come back to a point that I made earlier, the party is trying to present at the moment a deniability. We'd sent an email to John Swinney on behalf of the elected members that had to leave the SNP back when Jordan Linden was formally advised of court proceedings, and we sent that email asking for, where's the review that we were promised under Hamza Yusuf when it was a Bells Hill by-election. Jerry, you can read that in a second. I'll just give the context. And basically within that review process that we were promised, nothing has came forward. Lo and behold, at the weekend there, Sunday, that email's made its way to the press, and John Swinney has denied any knowledge or anything like that, and then we get a response because it's on the front page of the Times on Sunday that basically that John Swinney was written to back in September asking him for an update in relation to that, which is already a year and a half been the waiting. Now, point I would make in this is again coming back to this. Yesterday we received a response for no John Swinney, but for the SNP headquarters chief executive,
Mr. McCaig.
And what that did was the biggest insult that I think I've ever read in my life, because it didn't acknowledge victims. It was a party line in relation to we welcome this, but then again you read Tracy Carragher's comments just now as well. I welcome the victims. It's this pre-orchestrated ramble that really in effect I think is missing the point. It's completely missing the point.
Well, they actually try and turn the table on you and on us as it collectively and says, well, you left.
Yes.
You left.
You left the party.
Nothing at all to
Nothing
do with
about
us.
the targeted disciplinary action on each one of you for opening your mouth about the process.
And
Not
we'll come-
one for being vocal about Jordan Linden, his antics and his behaviour, or the current leadership. Because again, where he's concerned in relation to that, there are many emails I sent to Tracy Carragher highlighting the fact of the irresponsible stewardship, how you cannot look the electorate in the eye. And again, it's an absolute embarrassment. As far as I'm concerned, it's an embarrassment.
We need to cover the substantive reason why you two, Paul and David, were expelled, and why the rest of us. But we'll cover that. I don't want to jump from place to place, but while we're on the letters, right now, the time scale for this is really important. This letter's from the wonderful Alison Cameron, the former convener of the Bellshill-Nuddingston branch, right, who supported us a lot during that time, and this is 5th of May 2023. Dear First Minister, as convener of the branch, I'm writing to ask you for urgent intervention following the total breakdown of the SNP Group in North Lanarkshire. Arbitrary, disproportionate and bullying behaviour on the part of the SNP Group leader and some of our group colleagues has led to all 4 of our local councillors and 3 others being harassed and victimised for rightly challenging malpractice within the SNP Group. This prolonged behaviour culminated in sham disciplinary proceedings on Tuesday night, leading to 2 councillors being expelled for merely proposing or supporting an amendment to a motion, and our 4 councillors from Bellshill-Nuddingston receiving 6-month suspensions. One of those has already been suspended for the group for 5 months, removed from all committees. That was Greg. They have been left with no option but to resign from the SNP, and others may follow. As could be confirmed very quickly by an independent third party, there's no substance to the complaints made against the councillors. Each of them is highly respected by the communities they serve for both their integrity and hard work, as well as by our branch members for their dedication to the party and the cause of independence. Their crime has been to rightly challenge SNP Group leadership over their failure to investigate sexual harassment and disability discrimination complaints within the group. Our branch executive is extremely proud of each of our fellow members for the courageous way they have called out the malpractice currently endemic within the SNP North Lanarkshire Group. The malpractice includes failing to support a councillor who disclosed that he'd been sexually harassed by the then leader, discriminating against a visually impaired councillor, dishonestly reporting communications, gaslighting colleagues, suspending one of our colleagues for 4 months with no evidence, an alarming degree of political and procedural incompetence. And I could go on, Greg. Yeah. I could go on, but that letter was delivered to Hamza Yusuf electronically, and there again it was hand delivered to him on the streets of Bellshill during the by-election after Jordan had to stand down in disgrace from his, the SNP creating a by-election. So we're going back 3 years, 3 full years.
Ironically, standing in the ward that Jordan Linden represented, and the lady who you've just whose statement you've just read out was the convener of
she was
said branch.
Yes,
but was Jordan
wasn't just Uddingston and Bellshill, Motherman,
yeah, just can I say, because a similar letter, we talked about people, good people in the SNP. I think that's we'll probably all still get friends in the SNP, let's be honest, and we talk to them on a regular basis. I know I do.
I do too.
But when you look at some of the word, and there's a bit in here that reminded me that I want to bring out if we can, if Cammy's all right with. The Secretary of Motherwell and Wishaw Constituency branch, I'm writing, this is the same to Hamza Yusuf at this point, writing to ask for your support in addressing issues of victimisation, malpractice and resultant pandemonium within the SNP Group within North Lanarkshire. On Tuesday, 2nd of May, disciplinary action was taken against 3 of our branch members, all of them highly respected councillors. One was expelled, one was given a warning to last for 12 months, and the third is yet to be decided, as Councillor Cameron McManus took ill on the night of the disciplinary meeting. I want to come back to that,
I remember that.
if that's okay. Also resigning are 4 members from neighbouring branches. What these councillors have done, normally before full council meetings, the SNP would have a pre-meeting to discuss motions to the council and issue email directions on how to vote. So this gets on to the situation where, and we will get to it, is that Tracy Carragher knowingly put forward wrongful committee information to show us all as being part of committee structure, knowing that was incorrect because we'd all emailed her from there. come back to the disciplinary meeting, which we all attended, that was there, is that people need to understand what happened there. Whilst we're going through this sham of a meeting, it was a sham of a meeting.
It was a sham.
Kangaroo Court. Cameron took unwell, had to leave the meeting and had to go outside. Now, there was breathing difficulties and all sorts of stuff that was involved, and I had to stop them and say, can we stop this and somebody actually go and see what that young lad is like outside? And there was only one of them went out, and I think Tracy Carragher said, we'll continue. Now, somebody remind me, because I have lost my memory on that part, I'll be honest. But there was no reaction. There was nothing about Cameron's welfare, well-being or anything else. And it's still on the basis that they all knew the complaints that were going forward. And they wanted to leave this lad at this point, I'm not embarrassing you, Cameron, but sitting outside in a corridor with breathing difficulties. That's the calibre of people that were intent in inflicting damage of self-protectionism for themselves.
They were safeguarding him from afar.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Can I just say, I'm very jealous. You guys reading out your branch's communications. I had a very different experience. And listen, I had a lot of support from people in both of your branches. A lot of good people there, so I thank them for
wasn't my branch had to transfer over.
You had to transfer over also
listen, and again, that was always eternally
because of the problems you had in
Coatbridge with Carragher, Kirsten Larson, Leslie Mitchell, to name but a few, Alan Stubbs. So
unfortunately there used to be a lot of good people in Airdrie Shotts branch, but by the time this all happened, it was fully in control of the Coyles, Neil Gray, the Health Secretary, and Aram Quasar Javed at the time. So I had a very different experience. In fact, with Neil Gray at the time, on radio, live on radio, supportive of Tracy Carragher's actions.
Right, so I want to come back on that point. We're going to stop for a quick song just for a comfort break now for us, but as I say, we will be back in a minute. Tonight I don't think we're going to do TikTok live or any of that kind of thing. I think the subject matter is a wee bit too important, and we've got about half an hour left to try and cover a lot of ground. But if you're alright, Cameron, and you're happy to continue to stay to discuss this, then obviously we'll come back after the break. Give me 2 minutes and enjoy this wee song. Welcome back to What's the Point. Again, thanks for our listeners joining us this evening on digital and other platforms. The podcast will be dropped on Thursday for anybody at all that's missed this evening's show. Now, to come back to the point before the break, Paul, you were highlighting comments from Neil Gray, MSP and Cabinet Minister, in relation to Tracy Carragher's support. He was fully supportive of Tracy Carragher in relation to the expulsion of you and David in particular. You want to add anything to that? Is that appropriate for an MSP in such a position to be highlighting?
To be honest, I was shocked at the time that he actually commented on it, given the sensitivity of matters at that time, but the fact that he actually came out and wholeheartedly put his support behind Tracy Carragher and the leadership of the SNP Group and how they'd handled it, given what was out there already, I was absolutely disgusted by it and still am to this day. In fact, I would ask Neil this evening to retract that and provide a full apology for what he said at the time.
Well, as we know, the party is doubling down right now. John Swinney and others are making sure that Tracy Carragher is supported in her role as leader, even though Tracy Carragher stood in that witness stand for Jordan Linden and again gave evidence in behalf of that trial. Other individuals involved in that was Fiona Forey-Ringham, who went as a character witness and again tried to disparage Cameron in relation to evidence that was provided.
To the extent where the prosecutor fiscal accused her of lying in court. So Fiona Forey-Ringham, apparently her recollection of events completely differed between mine's and Jordan's. So instead, the prosecutor, in his summing up, accused her of
Wow, I didn't realise
lying
that.
in court.
Cammy, can I ask you a question?
Well-
You don't need to answer it. All this is all. That's you. You've been absolutely, in my opinion, exonerated in relation to what you've came forward and tried to say for day one is your concerns in relation to Jordan Linden. See, seeing the SNP and seeing their approach to this and still protecting Tracy Carragher for whatever reason, who is a list candidate in this authority.
She is.
She's standing for the regional list as an MSP candidate. And again, how does that make you feel? Because ultimately, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here, if I was in your position, you highlighted the other day there on Twitter, and I noticed that there's loads and loads of people really interested in your Twitter account just now. That it's no Twitter, it's X now. That you still feel you're being called a liar in all of this, and people are still no acknowledging the fact, even although there's been a conviction.
Pretty much. It's one of the things I said is after Thursday and Friday I was ready to put it all behind me and moving on, but when the SNP are putting out statements and they're completely playing down the overall situation, they're putting out statements but they're still categorically calling you a liar, it puts your back up and it feels as if the last 3 years you've climbed to the top of the mountain, you think you've finally reached it, only to turn round and say you've got another summit to climb.
God almighty.
I mean, this is obviously...
From a human point of view, it's wrong.
It's diabolical.
From a human point of view, it's wrong.
This is obviously making headlines at the moment. Now the case has been heard, but you know, this is what happens in wider society. Day in, day out, victims are being ignored, shut down.
But these are the people running your country.
Well, that was the point I was just coming to.
These are the people.
All these individuals we're talking about should be above all that. They should be setting the example.
And especially
and how they
society now,
deal with these
hard
matters.
enough for people to come forward who've experienced similar stuff, and I think that's why majority of the other men have decided to stay quiet, because it does harm. You do feel like you've took a dink in your manlyhood, so it's hard enough for people to come forward who've been through this.
Exactly.
Never mind the actual men, but you see individuals on social media who are making it out as if it's some sort of political to and fro, it's all politically motivated, and they don't realise the damage that they're doing in a wider scale.
Victims are seeing what's going on here, and you know, we're talking about local politicians there, but First Minister should be setting an absolute example.
Can I just take a minute and just to reflect on what you've just said there and commend you, because you were the only victim in all of this who waived his right to anonymity. You've came out to make sure that you were visible for other people who were victims of Linden, had the bravery and the support mechanism to know that somebody had the bravery to be able to say that I'm that individual and could potentially contact you or do anything at all in relation to looking for support. I just think that's a
phenomenal.
We all take our hat off. Take our hat off.
Phenomenal that.
And again, Cammy, I think the worst bit of every single bit of this, for me anyway, in your behalf, I don't know how you're personally feeling about this, but to be ignored, to be called a liar by Tracy Carragher, that a meeting didn't happen, a careerist, all self-gain, all these other things that have been said in relation to that over that 2.5 year plan.
Disgusting.
I think that's absolutely diabolical, and I just cannot under any circumstance square the peg, and honestly I think your bravery has to be noted. It really does.
Yeah.
They've acted with absolute cowardice.
Yeah.
To the extent where they have put forward Jordan's well-being beyond everything else and sought to denigrate each of us for trying to get to the bottom of
the fact of the matter,
of an investigation.
The fact of the matter is, Jerry, the 5 of us who are here and have supported Cammy as best we can, and another individual who left the group at that time, none of us could have looked ourselves in the mirror if we'd acted any differently. None of us would do anything any different, and we've just done what any normal person would do.
I was asked that question today, and I was asked the question.
There's 30 people in that room that didn't.
Well, it becomes a real legitimate point of right or wrong. Whose side do you want to be on when history is obviously going to be there at the end? And right now, there was a guilty verdict placed in relation to Jordan Linden's behaviour. He is exonerated, meaning Cameron, absolutely exonerated in relation to his claims. He stood there at a court and gave his testimony, along with others again who need to be commended for their bravery in all of this, because ultimately these are the individuals that came forward. The only difference being is the people that should have been there to support him weren't they?
See what gets me a wee bit, because we're in this political arena. See how this happened in a non-political arena.
That's what I'm saying. Imagine this was a work environment.
Totally different outcome. Not the court outcome, but the basis of how the leadership team, Tracy Carragher and others at that particular point, would not be getting away with the way that they conducted themselves.
They wouldn't be in a job.
They wouldn't be in a job. You're right.
Misconduct.
And it's like
their election.
You mentioned there, I wasn't aware of that, Cam, until you said there about Fiona Fotheringham being chastised by the judge and
the prosecutor.
Sorry, in the court case. And again, in terms of positioning that's not the first time. In terms of SNP group members within there.
I'm sure he said something similar to Tracy Carragher.
You've had the previous individuals in court cases.
In court cases, Alan Stubbs has been told, it was reported in the press that it was unreliable evidence. Now you've got somebody else that effectively the prosecutors are going to look at.
Same office staff, and McGregor's their employer.
It goes back to that word culture as far as I'm concerned. I don't think I was expecting to go into the culture that started to appear, and it appeared very, very quickly within a matter of months. I mean, we were elected in the May, this kicked off at the end of July, August, and all of a sudden it was like, by the following May I was out in my ear. And it's like, and it just doesn't be, but you've also got comments from people who make, like Kirsten Larson, that comment stuck in my mind. I've got family members that are involved in education, and for someone that's involved in education, and I think Kirsten Larson's in higher education, same basis, it's young people that you're working with. Further education, sorry.
The quote you're referring to there?
The quote basically is there. Based on the information we have, Jordan is only guilty of being a young person. That has stuck with me right from the moment that she said it. Who gives her the right to make that form of declaration? When you have somebody in the room, actually sitting in the room beside her, making the complaints and raising the concerns that are wholly personal, and she seeks to dismiss it by a comment like that.
It's minimised. So again, it comes back to that
hang your head in shame.
Opportunist moment in relation to the circumstance that's been presented. Let's take Claire Bartley. Again, Claire Bartley, prominent Cumbernauld councillor. Claire Bartley's sitting chastising every member in the room, threatening every member in the room. If you go now again, what was that threat of disciplinary on the individual Jordan Linden?
It happened.
When she was talking, it was you're bringing the party into disrepute, you're bringing the SNP into disrepute, you're bringing independence into disrepute. So you're putting all the three things up against some serious accusations.
Well, again, this is the bit that absolutely infuriates me. You're sitting in a room, your peers, there is 2730 or whatever it is elected SNP councillors, all coming, majority or a lot of them coming from professional backgrounds and various other things, and you have an individual sitting there not only threatening you're going to go to disciplinary and if anybody breaches any confidentiality of the group, but also in addition to that, you will affect the cause for independence. What? Sorry? What are you, a lunatic?
That individual,
are you bonkers?
See that individual.
I think what has happened would be more likely, in the long run, to have a negative impact.
Wow.
Where we are now.
That individual actually took a pop then at one of the journalists. Just took a pop at Tom Gordon. Tom Gordon got it in the neck, right? And effectively what she was saying, she didn't realise she was saying it at the time, but effectively what she was saying to Cameron is, you won't get any help in here if you come to us with complaints, because we'll try and sweep it under the carpet. And if you think going to journalists is the answer, don't do that either, because they're not your friends. So effectively, you've no friends anyway.
What she says is, if you go to a journalist, she'll find out.
Well, she was going to.
How's she going to find out?
She was going to come down on you like a ton of bricks.
My goodness. But anyway, moving on swiftly, because I do think there's still another couple of individuals in all of this that have to be named. Dan Thomas is another individual. You highlighted who was the provost or the deputy provost at the time of the administration.
Yeah.
Strong proponent, Tracy Carragher. The administration felt she was a significant part.
Yeah.
An ex-police officer of all people, which I find absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
Transport police.
Well, it's still a police officer to a certain degree, I'm
She
sure.
told us that the evidence put up against you in particular was a load of crap, but never made that known at any of the hearings that I
But I think the
arrived
picture
at.
in which we're trying to
Defended
explain
her
here
powers
is
instead.
the emails you mentioned in relation to Cameron to Richard Sullivan and Alan Masterton, who
Yeah.
were the leader, the deputy leader and the business manager at the time. That idea, it's no my joke, Jack, I'm throwing that away up to headquarters. So we've got a definitive time scale here. Everything receipted, by the way, might I add. We do have receipts for this time scale in relation to John Swinney's answer that we did not know any of this.
Great.
I find it absolutely absurd.
See that executive group, which included Anne at that
Yeah.
time? That executive group would meet perhaps on a weekly basis. I mean, when you were in the executive, how often did the executive meet in the previous?
We didn't really meet, did we? Because again, Tom Johnson was the leader at that time.
Yeah, we didn't have a belief in
No.
the micromanagement of an executive.
Well,
the group made
because
decisions.
Tracy Carragher
The
and others were adamant.
We chaired
that
meetings,
shouldn't be
had
there.
debates instead of
Right.
dictating.
I might be the only person that thinks that the executive team would regularly discuss matters of import to the group.
Matters that,
And
the
probably
business needed discussed in advance of meetings, but no.
business and risk, Paul. Now, there's not going to be a time during the term of a council when you're going to get as big an issue as this coming. The executive group must sit down, have a discussion. All members of that executive group would understand the implications of that and discuss what they're going to do with it. So for any executive group member to tell us that they didn't know anything about it and didn't escalate it, because it's the responsibility of each and every one of them to escalate it. If the leader doesn't escalate it, the deputy should. If the deputy doesn't, the business manager should. If the business manager doesn't, the assistant should. If neither does, the secretary should. But they did. They escalated it up to Ian McCann, and still nothing.
So make no mistake, just go back to the comments that I just made. When a matter of importance came up, the executive sat and they discussed things as a collective, 100%.
So it's not reasonable to bring that as
Can I make a
case
point
for
here?
deniability.
Listen, look, every one of us joined the SNP. Every one of us were SNP members. I was a member for a number of years. David, you were the same as me. We were all in the SNP. Cameron's been a member of the SNP since he was a young man. Every one of us were forced to leave that party. We were forced. We never left our own volition. We were forced into a position due to harassment, targeted attacks, and other things that then forced our hand because we gave support to an individual. That's what we did. Then there's no rewriting of
That's
that
a
history.
substantive point, Greg.
Now, the point that I would make right here and now is what we've already highlighted. We know branch members, we're still in contact with some branch members, we're still in contact with the people in the SNP. I think it's a disgrace that we are now forced into a position where I feel that to get our story out, to have this conversation, we're effectively targeting the SNP or attacking the SNP in this, when that was never my intention. It was never my intention to attack the SNP.
No minds.
And I think that it's an absolute travesty, the fact that individuals who have all been involved in this process that asked for a review. Now, when we left the SNP, we left the SNP. The point being is again, because the expectation of Hamza Yusuf's comments that yous will get a review, we could have handled this better.
But Greg, conversely, I mean, at the time when it was all happening, and I was going through a disciplinary process with Paul, and we got the emails to say, it's at a level that it's for expulsion, all this kind of stuff. And whilst you might laugh at that, you're exactly right. I mean, I think I was 19 when I started to support the SNP, and that wasn't just a few years ago. But I was getting messages from branch members, from MSPs, of saying that this, I cannot believe what you're going through. I don't know why you're going through this. That's there, and you start to think, well, see if you're aware of all this.
Do something.
Do do something.
Yeah.
Because you're in a position, you know, you've got 4 MSPs or whoever it was that's attaching to this group. So every one of them was aware of it. So what did you do to try and look at protection for Cammy's situation? To look at the fact that you've lost 8 members, plus another 2, plus Jordan. 11 members leaves the group. And nobody sits up and says, oh, wait a minute, there's something not right with this.
No, covered this.
On the notice given, David, I'd just like to point out.
Oh, you were on holiday story.
Yes, I was on holiday when the email came through, so did not get the email. I returned from holiday and had about 6 hours notice to attend, having arrived home at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, that I was to attend a meeting that morning, whereby I may be expelled
for the party.
Had no preparation time. Complained to Tracy Carragher, the leader, and headquarters, who said no, it's fine, and go ahead.
And again, Kelly Parry, local government convener, leader of Midlothian Council for the SNP, was the chair again, or whatever it was, or an independent witness to the proceedings. The point I would make here is on that evening there was another individual who wasn't part of your group, who was also up in charges in relation to that very same incident, Danish Ashraf. And Danish just so happened to be working for Hamza Yusuf at the time. What was Danish's outcome, can you remember? Now you got expelled, God, I feel like Oprah Winfrey. You get an expulsion and you get an expulsion.
The charges get dropped.
He apologised and that was okay.
Apologised and charges were dropped against him because we had all walked.
Were we given any opportunity to apologise? had we so wished?
I remember, Paul.
Had we so wished?
No,
that I remember.
And David tried to lead on evidence, and again the SNP's biggest thing is they don't like it when somebody presents evidence. Now, as I said again, every single thing that we've discussed this evening, we have the receipts in relation to the evidence for absolutely everything that we discussed.
What was the crime?
Jerry, honestly, I'm really glad, and it's not about because you need to draw that distinction.
What was the crime that led
bringing
to
the party into disrepute?
Right.
Was the reason I was expelled. And
explain, please, sir. Explain.
Go on, David.
So
explain.
bringing the party into disrepute.
So I can do a comparison at the end.
Aye, so you've got to do this comparison with Linden. Let's be perfectly right. So we're talking about someone that has previous complaints, but suggestions of impropriety that's there. Allegations is what I was looking for. Okay. So you've got that, and what we've got is that I brought the party into disrepute by proposing that Tracy Carragher take 7 days to amend a document that she knew was wrong.
Step back just a little bit as to why we got there.
Go back.
So Greg's been suspended in perpetuity, and
she wanted to make an example of him.
She made an example of him in the meantime and removed him from all committees, and each and every single one of us emailed to say, well, you can remove us from all committees also. And they were given, they had 7 to 10 days at that point in time to amend the SNP membership on committees.
Just forgot.
Headquarters, we asked headquarters, is this okay to do this? And we were informed by the National Secretary. We'd prefer you didn't, but there's nothing stopping you doing so. Sorry, David.
No, it's a fair point actually, because it sets the tone, doesn't it? Because effectively all that we were asking at that point, Tracy Carragher then put forward that we all were remaining on committees.
Which was untrue.
An erroneous piece of documentation that went to council and went to council officers, and all I said was, sorry, Provost, can I suggest that Tracy Carragher takes 7 days just to reevaluate that document and resubmit it with the correct information? And all hell broke loose, and that was bringing the party into disrepute. And here we've got Linden.
I don't think you particularly pointed out Tracy Carragher. I think
I just said
all parties within the chamber, not just the SNP.
Was that right? Well, that makes it worse.
If I remember correctly.
That makes it worse.
You offered an olive branch. To her to say, don't submit that erroneous document to the council because it breaches all of the Nolan principles of behaviour in public life. It's not, you've got honesty, openness, transparency. I emailed her.
Anybody brought the party into disrepute at that point, it was Tracy Carragher for creating that situation.
Paul, let me tell you what I did the night before. The night before that council meeting, I emailed her and I pled with her in the email. I said, please do not submit this erroneous motion to the council, knowing that it's not true, knowing that it's not reflective, because it will bring the party into disrepute. You risk bringing the party into disrepute, and she did. And as a result of that, you two get expelled, and the rest of us get suspended. Absolutely ridiculous.
It's farcical.
So, what's the future for the SNP in North Lanarkshire? What do you think? What do you think is the future for that council group? Because given the fact that they were involved, and that's unfortunately for some of the members within that group, their silence is actually tragic.
I feel sorry for the membership, the ordinary membership in North Lanarkshire.
Definitely for the branch members.
Yeah.
Personally?
Yeah, this is the people representing them.
Personally, I think those who were involved in the executive groups during that period of time should resign.
To a man.
They should resign, and they should resign their party membership and stay away from public life forever.
Agreed.
I think that should be enforced. I'll go further. I think SNP, that the actual party headquarters, have got sufficient evidence and information, and if they had the courage to actually want to be seen to be acting properly and with morals and everything else, is that they would look at everything that's available to them and remove the people from the party, as they did with us, Paul.
Clear the decks
and clear it out. Whether I think that will happen, not a chance.
For the sake of any victim, in similar circumstances,
politics of this,
set an example.
Talk about people's
set an
lives.
example.
Right and wrong.
It's right and wrong. You said it many times. It's right and wrong. It's personal right and wrong. Forget about dressing it up as politics, because it never was, and yet that's the reason these people shouldn't be there.
Lifetime bans. It should be lifetime bans from the SNP.
Cammy, is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, that's what should happen, but if you're continuing to let individuals stand within the list for the party, then they might all be MPs and MSPs for the next 10 years.
Absolutely disgusting.
I can't fathom that individual is now on the regional list in relation to being an MP, an MSP candidate,
and won't be removed.
And again, even their own electorate, what is the relationship with the electorate now, given the fact it's been national news, everything else, their names in every publication constantly? I just think that again, it's not for me to decide what the sanctions of the party is. I'm no longer an SNP member.
It's what it says to victims, Craig.
But that's the point in this. It's the party's response to this that I just cannot get my head around. I really can't.
I'm conscious we're running short in time now as well, I've no doubt, but obviously the Scottish Youth Parliament as well, the First Minister should have taken action there also. So
Barry sends an email out last week. Obviously the court case is on the Friday. Is it the Friday or the Thursday?
Thursday, I sent
the judgment was on the Thursday. Barry sends an email out on the Friday morning to all elected members in the council, the 77 members. Barry, in that email you stipulate what?
That Tracy Carricker should stand down, and she should be removed as leader, and if not, the leader of council, Jim Logue, should retract her advance payment.
And not only that, you also highlighted in there as well, there was about 5 or 6 names of the leadership team that should all resign immediately for the SNP. Yes. And in addition, you also highlight Councillor Anne Ballinger, who again is in the recordings all online at the moment. Poor Jordan's mental health. I'm disgusted with anybody at all, which we already proved that there was nobody leaking for your group, but again, anybody could do that to a colleague and take advantage of their mental health and all this other stuff. And then also on the top of that, you'd also requested that Kirsten Larson stand down, the educationalist for New College Lanarkshire, that she should really consider her position, because ultimately her comments that Jordan's only guilty of being a young person, still absolutely crazy comments that I can't get my head around. You'd ask for them to be removed. Yes. I jump on the back of that email and basically concur with you, but also I think that again the most important point of that is for Tracy Carragher's remuneration for the good folk at home. You'll hear me actively talk about the SNP
for many months
being on the payroll with a Labour leader and I said it in countless podcasts, but Tracy Carragher gets an enhanced payment of £10,000 for just being the leader of the opposition. And again, now what we finally look to be doing is there's been 2 motions submitted tonight for Labour. One is the retraction and a request for Tracy Carragher, or a demand for Tracy Carragher and Fiona Foreign to resign for the SNP Group, and in addition to that, the remuneration package, that £10,000 to be removed from her. And also there will be another motion submitted, and that is the North Lanarkshire Council's relationship with the Scottish Youth Parliament, and for a full review to be conducted. I think the instruction, and I'll be very careful because I don't tend to fare too well when I mention the Chief Executive, but the Chief Executive is to conduct a full review that Scottish Youth Parliament relationship. Now, that's bold action coming for Labour in North Lanarkshire, and I'm one of the biggest critics of Labour in North Lanarkshire. I think we can all agree. But that's at least an action.
It's action.
It's action.
Well, it is action, but it's also on the basis that I think that they're taking it more on the personal level. That there's been a sidelining almost to the politics attaching to that, because they've recognised the human element to it.
Yeah.
And the human element is that we still get somebody that's sitting within that council group in Cammy, and he has gone through everything that's there, so they've recognised that.
Yeah.
So for once, hats off to Jim Lowe and whoever pulled that together, because it's absolutely necessary.
I think credit's due.
Necessary.
Credit Jim and his team for that, because that
credit them for that.
It showed leadership.
Approach.
That showed leadership.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to get any further platitudes for Jim Lowe this evening. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Again, apologies, it has been a very, very dry show. I do want to say a big, massive thank you to all the guests that have joined us tonight. But more importantly, I would like to say thank you to Cammy, and again recognise the level of bravery in you that brought this issue forward in relation to your colleagues for support. And Cameron, again, I just think that, my God, you deserve the answers and the positions that the SNP should have done a long time ago, and hopefully they make the right decision over the next couple of days, because ultimately there is positions within that SNP group that are untenable now.
We can live in hope.
Yeah, we do live in hope. But anyway, this has been What's the Point. Thanks very much for joining us, and thanks again to my guests, Cameron McManus, Jerry Brennan, Paul Damasio, Barry McCluskey and Davy Crichton. We'll see you all next week.